The darkness seeped into the streets like a stain, as if the night itself was a living entity that wrapped its shadowy tendrils around the city. The only sound was the distant hum of the highway, a mournful sigh that seemed to carry the whispers of the damned. Amidst the desolate landscape, one building stood out, a crumbling tenement, its walls like a fractured mirror, reflecting the shattered hopes of those who dwelled within. In room 314, where the walls seemed to weep with the tears of the forgotten, Dr. Catherine McCormick huddled on the bed, her eyes fixed on the cryptic message scrawled on the wall in red ink. "The shivering will come for you." Her mind reeled with the implications, her thoughts tangled in a web of fear and confusion. How had this message appeared, seemingly out of nowhere? And what did it portend? The door creaked open, a faint rustle of fabric, and a figure materialized in the doorway. Catherine's heart skipped a beat as she beheld the gaunt, angular face, the eyes like two black holes sucking in the light. It was her patient, Amelia, her face a death's mask, her eyes unfocused, as if gazing into a realm beyond this world. Amelia's presence was a palpable thing, a cold draft that seeped into Catherine's bones. The doctor's gaze was drawn to the patient's hands, long fingers curled into claws, as if grasping for something invisible. The air in the room seemed to vibrate with an otherworldly energy, as if the very fabric of reality was about to unravel. "Amelia, what's going on?" Catherine whispered, her voice barely audible over the sound of her own racing heart. "What's happening to you?" The patient's response was a low, almost inaudible whisper, the words dripping with an ancient, sepulchral tone. "The shivering. It's coming. Can't stop it. Can't escape." As Amelia spoke, the shadows in the room began to writhe and twist, as if alive. The darkness coalesced into tendrils that snaked across the walls, pulsing with a malevolent power. Catherine felt the hairs on the back of her neck rise, her skin crawling with a creeping sense of dread. Suddenly, the lights flickered, and the room plunged into darkness. In the sudden blackness, Catherine was aware of Amelia's presence drawing closer, the patient's icy breath whispering against her ear. "It's here," Amelia whispered, the words echoing through Catherine's mind like a curse. "The shivering has come for us." The darkness was absolute, a palpable presence that suffocated Catherine. She strained to hear Amelia's breathing, but the patient's presence had vanished as suddenly as it appeared. The silence was oppressive, heavy with an unspoken threat. Suddenly, the lights flickered back to life, casting an eerie glow over the room. Catherine's gaze swept the space, searching for Amelia, but the patient was gone. In her place, a series of arcane symbols adorned the walls, pulsing with a faint, blue light. The air hummed with an electric tension, as if the very fabric of reality was being stretched to its limits. Catherine's heart raced as she approached the symbols, her mind reeling with the implications. She recognized some of the markings as ancient runes, used by cults to summon and bind otherworldly entities. The others, however, were unlike anything she had ever seen, as if they belonged to a forgotten language, born from the very depths of madness. As she reached out to touch the symbols, the room began to shudder, the walls vibrating with an ominous power. The hum of the lights grew louder, taking on a rhythmic quality, like the beat of a dark heart. Catherine felt herself being drawn into a vortex of chaos, the symbols on the wall pulsing with an otherworldly energy that seemed to be pulling her towards some abyssal void. And then, she heard the whisper, a sibilant hiss that seemed to originate from all around her. "The shivering has begun." The whisper grew louder, a maddening susurrus that seemed to seep into Catherine's bones. She felt her grip on reality begin to slip, as if she was being pulled into a realm where the laws of sanity no longer applied. The symbols on the wall pulsed with an ever-increasing intensity, casting a hypnotic glow over the room. Suddenly, the lights exploded in a blinding flash, plunging the room into darkness once more. When Catherine's vision returned, she found herself alone in the room, the symbols erased from the walls as if they had never existed. But the silence that followed was oppressive, heavy with an unspoken threat. Catherine stumbled towards the door, driven by a desperate need to escape the crushing sense of foreboding that seemed to suffocate her. As she reached the threshold, she caught a glimpse of Amelia, standing in the shadows, her eyes aglow with an otherworldly light. The patient's gaze locked onto Catherine's, and for an instant, the doctor felt herself staring into the abyss. Amelia's eyes were gateways to a realm of unspeakable horrors, where sanity was a distant memory, and the laws of reality were but a distant, fading memory. And then, Amelia vanished, leaving Catherine to stumble into the darkness, pursued by the echoes of her own screams. The city outside seemed to fade into the background, replaced by a labyrinthine nightmare, where the shivering waited, its presence growing stronger with every step. Catherine stumbled through the darkened corridors, her heart racing with every creak of the floorboards, every groan of the ancient pipes. The air was heavy with the scent of decay, as if the very foundations of the building were rotting away. She burst through the front door, into the chill of the winter night. The city lights seemed to twinkle like malevolent stars, as if the very fabric of reality was warping and twisting around her. The streets were empty, save for the occasional passerby, who seemed to hurry away, as if driven by some unseen force. Catherine's breath fogged the air as she ran, her feet pounding the pavement in a desperate bid to escape the clutches of the shivering. But with every step, the presence drew closer, its icy breath whispering in her ear, its dark tendrils creeping around her ankles, pulling her back into the abyss. She turned a corner, and suddenly, the cityscape before her began to warp and twist, like a funhouse mirror reflecting a madman's nightmare. Buildings seemed to melt, their walls running like wax, as if the very fabric of reality was dissolving before her eyes. In the distance, a figure waited, its presence a dark gravity that seemed to draw Catherine in. Amelia stood, her eyes aglow with an otherworldly light, her presence a beacon calling Catherine towards the abyss. And as the doctor approached, the world around her began to unravel, thread by thread, until only the darkness remained. The darkness coalesced into a portal, a swirling vortex that seemed to pull Catherine towards Amelia. The patient's eyes burned with an intense, unearthly power, as if she was a gateway to a realm where madness reigned supreme. Catherine felt the shivering's presence closing in, its icy breath whispering secrets in her ear. The air was heavy with the stench of decay, as if the very fabric of reality was corroding away. With a sense of inevitability, Catherine reached out, her hand drawn to Amelia's like a moth to a flame. As their fingers touched, the world around them erupted into chaos. The buildings seemed to implode, their walls collapsing inwards, as if the very fabric of reality was being consumed by some ancient, eldritch power. The sky above turned a sickly shade of green, as if the stars themselves were rotting away. The air was filled with the screams of the damned, a cacophony of terror that seemed to emanate from the very fabric of the vortex. And at the center of the maelstrom, Amelia's eyes burned bright, her gaze a vortex that seemed to pull Catherine deeper into the abyss. The doctor felt her mind unraveling, her grip on reality tenuous at best, as she stared into the void that was the shivering. In that moment, Catherine knew she was doomed, trapped in a realm where madness reigned, and the laws of reality were but a distant memory. The shivering had her in its grasp, and it would never let go.